From project reviews to incredible interviews, along with the general things in Web3, CraigO's Crypto Corner covers the space in a fun and engaging way. We dive in so our listeners can conceptualize, plan, strategize, and implement their very next move. We are quickly becoming a platform that enriches and supports the overall foundation of Web3. In order to grow, you need your voice to be heard. If you have infinite curiosity, then CraigO's Crypto Corner is just for you. Come join us.
You're tuning into CraigO's Crypto Corner, the best in Web3 blockchain, NFT, and cryptocurrency technology. Great reviews, incredible interviews with the leading people in the Web3 ethos, and just the general things Web3. Welcome everybody on Twitter Spaces, Facebook, and YouTube. I want to also give a special welcome to my co-host who is in the metaverse, Mr. MetaMatt. How are you doing this week, my friend?
Good, good. How are we doing? I'm excited for this episode. We got some great guests today.
We do. Did you like the theatrics of it?
I like to bring from the metaverse into back into the great studio by Downtown TV in Connecticut. I love it.
I love the red shirt, the red at the top, you know, the microphones.
Got a match.
That might be a pair of Dre Beats. Am I correct?
Oh, these are like $10 Walmart headphones.
Whatever. You could have been like Dre Beats. GM, Matt Swayze. I see you, my friend. All right, let's get to it. I have always infinite curiosity. I always butcher that one. I always have infinite curiosity, and I'd like to bring my good friend Ralph Quintero in with the weekly daily Ralpha update. What's up, Ralph?
What is up, CraigO? What's up, Matt? How are you boys doing today?
Hey, how we doing?
Doing well.
Hey, Matt, I hope you're not wearing red in like honor of what the markets are doing
to match the market.
Yeah, you need to be wearing green, brother.
Well, we're getting there. I mean, if you look at crypto, we're looking pretty green, right?
we are. We were looking more green yesterday, but we were not looking so green over the weekend with this whole SVB craziness. It was absolutely insane. Hopefully, neither of you or any of our guests had too much exposure. Although it looks like it was resolved. The government, we're here to help. I don't know exactly how I feel about that. But it definitely has opened up a can of worms with regards to a traditional banking system. And it's had ripple effects across not only the TradFi world, but the DeFi world and well into NFTs. Even Amazon, who we talked about last week during the show, has announced that they're slightly pushing back their NFT platform release. Now, whether that has anything to do with what happened with SVB over the weekend or not, I'm not so sure, but I would venture to say that it is. We also saw announcements yesterday from Meta saying that they were pulling NFTs out of Instagram and that they were going to be paring back all of their metaverse offerings, which I thought was really interesting because Mark Zuckerberg has been doubling and tripling down on the metaverse as of lately. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. What are your thoughts?
Working in silence. They don't invest that much money, time, effort, and energy and create a narrative in the Web3 space to Web2 people to integrate these opportunities. I think they're going underground. When you look at the Oculus that they had produced, that took a back seat to Instagram. But at one point, that was going to be very powerful, and they knew that was way ahead of its time. So right. All that they're doing is going back in the cave, working in silence, cutting a high number of employees out of the space, so that way they can save and deploy capital in other areas for Web3 ventures. And that's at least my quick take on it. Meta, what are your thoughts?
I mean, that being said, I'm still seeing a whole bunch of the Meta Quest, VR ads and all that going on all over Hulu and all that. So I guess they're still trying to keep us like aware that it is going to be something in the future. I believe, kind of like Craig was saying. Like you said, though, I do think they're going to be taking a back seat. I think it's interesting, though. I know that there's a lot of influencers talking about the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, trying to compare to FTX. Of course, with the FDIC being the big difference maker with the $250K that you are, everyone knew already going into this that you were already insured $250,000 by the FDIC, not just for this one bank, but for pretty much every bank that there is out there. It's not like with crypto where there isn't as much insurance. So I always think it's funny seeing the comparisons between FTX and Silicon Valley Bank. When one's a bank, banks have been around for ages. Crypto is a new concept, so there are similarities, but there are also a lot of differences to definitely be aware of as like someone in the financial sector. I think people should be educating themselves, as far as how finances work.
100%. I think we saw a lot of armchair quarterbacks this weekend on Twitter. I think you'd agree. But it did, to your point, I think, get everybody thinking and researching and trying to get a better grasp of what it all meant. So, among a lot of the negatives that we saw over the weekend, I think that there definitely were some positives. Another positive is that art continues to kind of be the meta or the alpha. Throughout everything that was going on in the weekend, one of one art was absolutely pumping. Traditional art NFT projects were pumping, and I think that we're going to continue to see that well into this year. With some key sales. There's a Fidenza on sale today at Sotheby's. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on, and I've seen a lot of what we would call NFT whales continuing to expand their collections of art, which I absolutely love. You guys know that recently I launched Here for the Art as part of the Daily Ralpha in collab with The Time is DAO, which was founded by Rebecca Bastian. What's interesting about that is we've been engaged in a partnership with a platform called Hug.xyz. So the URL is thehug.xyz, and that platform was founded by Randy Zuckerberg of Facebook fame, one of the earlier Facebook employees, and family member of Mr. Mark, and Debbie Soon. And they've created this incredible platform to give artists space, to give them education, to give them the tools that they need to be successful in Web3. And it's awesome to have that partnership with them and being able to showcase these artists every day. So if you get a chance, either check it out through the Daily Ralpha, or you can check it out directly at thehug.xyz, because it's a super, super cool tool.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I love that. And I agree with you completely on that. And we just put up on the screen share the hug.xyz. But by the way, if you guys aren't subscribed to the Daily Ralpha, it's still free. Am I correct, Ralph?
It is. And it's a quick 5-minute read every day of everything that's going on in the space. And in times like this, it's even more important to stay informed of what's going on.
I love it. Last piece, maybe we just cover briefly, and because I know we're going to talk with today's special guest, Chat GPT 4 just was unveiled yesterday.
Crazy.
It's amazing how fast great content can be produced, right? So we talked a little bit about SVB Bank, what's going on there. Obviously, the government kind of put a plug in that, so things are okay for now. I think you're going to see people slowly pulling out some money, being like, okay, it's safe, and it's just going under the mattress. Hopefully not the mattress, maybe precious metals. I'm banking on precious metals. I think that might be an opportunity play. Then you talked about the fine art. Our art it's digital art and from artists, and we're going to see, I think, more meta play this year. I'm really excited to see what happens there. And then the last bit is Chat GPT. I did 4 posts last night that takes me, I was 4 times faster with content creation by just prompting unique cues within the Chat GPT, the free version, and how fast it came up with great ideas, and how it actually, I think when you get plugged, when you ask a question and you get a multiple of answers, you're able to then think differently. What are your thoughts surrounding how fast Chat GPT is growing? And then Chat GPT 4, what do you think this means?
I mean, look, this is a huge time for the space that we're in, for content creators, for technology in general, right? Like we saw ChatGPT 3 really start to take off towards the latter part of the year, beginning of this year, and here we are 3 months later with ChatGPT 4, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, just the kinds of things that you could do and the advances that they made between 3 and 4 were just phenomenal. And we were joking around before we came on live, talking about whether ChatGPT 4 is going to actually create ChatGPT 5, and if we were to apply Moore's law, like when are we going to have ChatGPT 5? Like a week from now? But it is phenomenal, and I do encourage everybody to play around with it, because it is going to become a part of our everyday lives. If you start looking at all the tools that we use on a daily basis, Google has announced that they've adopted AI into every single one of its tools, whether it's Google Slides or Gmail or Word, I called it Word, but Docs. But Microsoft is doing exactly the same thing. So this is going to become commonplace in workplace, in our lives, in how we interact with people, in how we interact with content. So definitely you should get your feet wet. I do have one more tease, Craig, and that is I am testing a super cool tool. I'm not going to share what it is yet, so I'm going to leave it to be a tease. But I am absolutely loving it. And if you're following me on Twitter, you may or may not have seen some responses that I'm using that tool for. It makes me happy every time I use it. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe next week I'll have more info. But that's what I got.
I love it. You're always posting positive things. I'll notice it on the weekend, make a day brighter, make an impact. So I have infinite curiosity, and I can't wait to see where that particular collection goes. A little alpha insight for those that maybe didn't get in. Maybe they
coming soon.
We'll leave it as a mystery. So let's get to it today. Our guest for today is Eddie Kayal, who is popularly known as Dancing Eddie on crypto Twitter. Eddie's love for dance is an essential part of his philosophy in the Web3 space, and he has gained the recognition from some of the top communities. He believes that the right dance moves done correctly and in sync with the rhythm can bring people together to create social currency, which is necessary for growth. Eddie is an active host, co-host, and speaker for the Zen Academy and the 33 Club, conducting Twitter Spaces on a weekly basis with Web3 insights. Eddie holds a BA in politics from New York University and an MBA from the University of Arizona Global Campus. Like me, he is a true degen in the space. He spent over 4,000 hours continuing to study, actively researching, discussing trading, and contributing to the development of NFTs and NFT-related projects. He joined the 33 Club in late 2021 and was later appointed as the official ambassador of the 33 Club by March of 2022. During our discussion, we will explore high-level concepts around digital asset communities, mass adoption, the Zen Academy, and much more. Let's plot, plan, strategize, and implement. ZM, Eddie, how are you doing?
What's up, everybody? How are we doing this morning?
We're doing well. We're doing really well. And quick screen share, Tony. Just want to show Eddie's page. I like to say it's not follow, it's engage, but do click that follow button. Check him out. He's doing great things in the space. We're doing well, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Been a bit of a busy morning, but a bit of a busy past few days. Started off for this week with an actual bang, by the way. Quick little story. I woke up. I woke up to the sound of like this crazy crashing noise, and I was like, I know it's a car accident. I just hope they didn't hit the house. Luckily, they didn't. I look outside. The window's right behind the monitor. I look outside. A SUV hits a telephone pole 10 feet from my driveway, knocks down the telephone pole. That's a banger of a way to start off my week. She was okay. All's good. No one was hurt. Luckily, it was like this close to being really bad.
I mean, that was a bus he was driving. I mean, you sent me the picture. That was a bus. I mean, that was
basically.
That was a big time SUV. Well, I'm glad she's okay. I'm glad your house wasn't hit because we were just talking about creation of more content for today's episode, which, by the way, it's awesome to have you on. And Steve Miller gives you a big shout out. So kind of funny that we all talk offline in the real world, not just the metaverse.
Right.
The 33 Club announced that they are going to do marketing insights. What area will focus on these particular insights? Because it is a learning platform, and I want you to talk to me a little bit about Zenica and the Zen Academy and what it means, and then we'll dive in a little bit into the Zen Pass.
Sure. So on the 333 Club, market insights, and on all that, let me just break things down high level first. So Zen Academy is Zen Academy. It is Zenica's way of educating the masses, right? So thank you for pulling that up right there. That is it's basically his NFT project, which is ongoing development, like ongoing building it out. That's still plenty is in the works, and we've got some pretty cool stuff on the way, actually. The PFPs are coming soon via the Zen chest, which will be opened for said PFPs. But that's Zen Academy. Now, I am specifically the 333 Club ambassador, and what that means is the 333 Club, which was founded back in, I want to say, November 2021. So a little over, can't do numbers now, about 1.5 years ago, roughly. It was founded with the hopes of, so like Zenica was being reached out to all the time because he's a bigger name in the space for his thoughts on things, his opinions, his advisorship, whatever. And he was like, all right, this is getting a little out of hand. Like, I kind of want a way to congregate that and also allow for an opportunity for high-level collectors, creators, founders, you name it, whatever, to kind of congregate in a central area. Not so much of an alpha group, because alpha group as a concept is starting to come around, but it was more so less alpha, more discussion, and more active contribution to a greater ultimate Web3 space.
Right.
And that's kind of what that was at the time. Minted out, and took a while to mint out, but was actually, by the way, little fun fact, the first application process I've seen for NFTs. I think has existed for NFTs. I got in on the first wave, kind of just hung out there I got in November, hung out there for a while, and then come March, he brought me on as the ambassador. And basically, what we do is it's just like high-level conversations between high-level people in the NFT and Web3 space. That's, conversations on the market, conversations on certain projects, conversations from between founders of asking about their projects and things of that nature. Now, to talk about like more of the education and outward side, that's things like the market insights, which is more run by Mushroom and one of the partnerships that we have with one of the 333 members,
right,
where we pull data, run those market insights. And then I run on Sunday nights the 333 Club Spaces, which has been a bit of a ride. And I'll say this last thing before I throw it back to you. It's been wild because it initially started a little like right around a year ago, actually. I think the anniversary is coming up. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but it's coming up. And when it started, it was I would host, Zeneca would co-host, 333 Club would be there. And that was also during the time, like towards the latter half of the bull market, where we would pull in like a lot of listeners, probably about 1,000 concurrent listeners, up to 1,000 concurrent listeners per episode, all the way up to late into like at the early stage of the real true deep bear. And then when that happened, things started, like we started to lose listenership, and we kind of went through like a lull period of figuring out what our voice was, what kinds of discussions we wanted to have, so on and so forth. And actually at one point, like recently, because Zeneca's moved to Dubai, he's had to hop off and he's not been able to co-host with me. So it's just been me. And like when it comes to a reach perspective, I have 10,000 followers. He has 300,000 followers. So his reach was always helpful. But now I've come to realize like, hey, it's not always necessarily how big your account is or how what of that nature. It's all about running conversations that people actually want to hear, people actually want to be a part of. And the past few months, we've kind of figured out that formula and found conversations that people like. And that spans, it's mostly topical, but it's all fun.
Let me throw this to you. So I really enjoy going into specific spaces, and Meta Matt and I have talked a lot about this. Meta, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this. But when I go into your space, it's organized. There's honest conversation. It's a controlled environment. It's respectable environments. I've also gone into rooms where there's trolling, inappropriate comments. And listen, there's a time and a place for inappropriateness. But when you're building a platform and you're creating a community that is token gated or digitally asset based, that adds a value, there is a professionalism at the highest levels in a space that right now seems to be, to the outside world, questionable at best. So I really enjoy what you're doing. I've hopped into a number of your spaces because I know when I go in, even if I'm listening to you for just 5 minutes, I'm taking away something new. And I know that this morning's conversation in the Zen Academy was about Chat GPT 4. I want to hear your insights on it. Meta Matt, what are your thoughts on this, my friend?
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really important when it comes to these spaces, to have people who are hosting it who can not only run a room, but keep the rooms interesting. And from what I've seen, as Craig was saying, I also have been in some of the spaces that you hosted as well, and I'm a huge fan. I love the way that you run them. I think Steve Miller's also in the room, another great host of another spaces as well. Really, really professional. I love the way he runs his rooms as well. But yeah, I really want to get into, because I was actually listening to that spaces, the one about the AI and actually about GPT-4, Chat GPT-4 and AI and all that kind of stuff. Craig, I'm assuming you probably already had a question ready for him as far as that goes. If not, I just want to know what your thoughts are on, when it comes to Chat GPT-4 and just GPT-4 in general, and how all that's going to really play an effect in the future. I know we were talking about earlier with the Daily Ralpha.
So you just want me to go for it? All right. Okay, so I'll do a quick answer to the first point on just Spaces hosting. When it comes to Spaces hosts and space hosting, I'll just say this. The way I choose to run my shows, I try to run them informally, because no one's looking to get on a space late at night, especially on a Sunday, and put on a suit and tie. People just want to talk. But at the same time, there's a certain level of organization where you want to like make sure that certain speakers get an opportunity to speak, get their conversations through and whatnot. And also a certain level of like, hey, you know, we don't want to just be focused on one voice or whatnot. And a lot of one of the things I've noticed just really quick on spaces is a lot of people raise their hand, and a lot of spaces have hand raising as like a predominant policy. I actually have always had the policy that unless the space is unruly and unless the space needs this, or it's just like people are constantly talking over each other, no hands. Like I will respect them, but I prefer them not to, because when we're sitting around in a conversation, like if I was sitting with you in person, I wouldn't ask you to raise your hand. I would ask you to just, you would just talk normally and we would just banter back and forth.
Right.
And that's kind of something that I've been focusing on heavily. And I've just tried to cultivate a kind of conversation where discussion and just organic feel is what I'm going for. Less so at least in spaces, some people try to either, you know, get on a soapbox and chat. It's more so I want to just have conversations. So that's my thought for spaces. And do you have any thoughts before I hop to GPT?
Yeah, I would just say, because I just wanted to just round on that. I agree with you completely, right? So one of the things that I like about being a host on the podcast is that I get to actually see your face. You get to engage with me, whereas on Twitter Spaces, it's just voices. And you have to really be cognizant based on tonation. Have they come to a conclusion in their point? And so as you were finishing up that part, I just wanted to say I agree with you on that. Now, around Chat GPT-4, what are your thoughts right now on that?
Man, I mean, it was funny. Right before I hopped on, I was on Twitter, and there's a couple accounts that I've noticed that have basically become Chat GPT bots. Like friends of mine that I respect it, because, you know, everyone's trying new things and trying to see like what works for engagement, whatever. And there's a pair, at least, of my friends that I'm like, wow, they are pulling serious engagement by just posting AI, which that like engagement on Twitter is very specific and rewards very specific types of content. And it's very hard to learn what kinds of things that it rewards. And ChatGPT already figured it out. Right. And it's like, I also last night, one of the things I'm in the process of I'm in the process of applying for law school. And in the process, like, you have to do quite a lot of writing, reasonably so. And I ran some of my writings through ChatGPT to like look for errors, look for ways that I could possibly like change things. And it's like, I mostly kept it as was, but I was like, you know what, this is crazy efficient. And you hear things like serious competition coming from the ways of, I believe, like Google and Google Docs and Google Sheets specifically, where you can where AI is putting together algorithms and functions and tables and whatnot, and building out full spreadsheets. And the most impressive thing that we saw with GPT-4 is someone took a piece of paper, drew on this this random letter, drew on their piece of paper, and was like, "Hey, with this piece of like, here's a website. Just I'm drawing this website here, and just make it." And it made it. Like it made a website that was functional, that had that. So there's conversations that we have where some people think that, is this going to make people lazy? To some extent, sure. I do think that it will increase the laziness of the population, where there's certain tasks and things that people will not have to do, or at least will forward on to the bots and AI, which reasonably so. But at the same time, I'm personally more of an optimist, and I am also like someone that appreciates efficiency. Yep. So I really can see the value of just being able to be like, all right, you know, instead of hiring a full team of people to do this one task, and that task may be taking a week, I could just tell it literally verbally, especially if you have like speech to text verbally, I would like this, and that, and I want it in this shape. And just a few minutes later, it's done. And that's something I'm excited for.
And Eddie, here's the thing, right? Today, your intro, every week, myself and MetaMatt, we have a competition. And the competition is, I send him two versions. One is one that I've written, and one is that I put it in ChatGPT and I say, refine this. And I'll send it to Meta. And Meta, I believe I'm like 50-50, 5 for 5. So right now, ChatGPT and I are even. I see that ChatGPT can make people who decide not to be lazy and look at different perspective of thought on the idea of content creation will actually increase their intelligence. And those that decide to be lazy and understand the basic prompts, literally can do just about anything. It depends on the level of content creation. So I want to shoot into this next part with you. What are 5 for you? And I want you to be really specific on this, because this is where the alpha insight learning comes from. And with 4,000 plus hours, I mean, who better to ask than you? What are the 5 key metrics right now to determine if a community or digital asset project is right for you, Mr. Eddie?
Metrics. Okay.
It can be technical and fundamental. I want to be clear. I like a little bit of the technical, where you're looking at the numbers, you're reading a chart, but then the fundamental is the social currency. How is the community responding? Do they like the idea of the storybook sizzle? So just, you can
Sure.
open it up.
I mean, I'll answer with like, I guess some of my favorite communities and some of the things that kind of made me super interested. My single favorite community right now on Twitter and just in NFTs is the Sappy Seals. I love the Sappy Seals. I'm very, very aggressive in my postings about them just because they're amazing. Now, notably, their community, like different communities have different sects. So I would call the Sappy Seals more of like a meme community, whereas Zen Academy is more of like an education community. And Azuki, another one that I like and I'll probably touch on, is more of like an anime as well as luxury community. And first off, finding a community that is established more or less its niche or its interests, number one, right? Like D-Gods with frats, Pudgy Penguins with cute penguins and also retailing and whatnot. As I said, Zen Academy education, Sappy Seals memes, and Azuki luxury goods and anime. Like these are, first off, you want to know clearly that a project or a community that you're looking at has established what their lane is in terms of what kinds of people they're looking for, what kind of community they're looking to promote, and what kinds of initiatives they're going to be pushing for. Then in terms of metrics, it's kind of like on Twitter and on socials, the most damning thing is you don't want to see silence. You want it, like, especially from the founders, unless if those founders are specifically going silent because they're creating something very specific and are like heads down and a week or two are silent, that's one thing. But extended silence for extended periods of time, like for really no clear reason, and just coming back here and there, like lack of engagement from the founding team is a little bit concerning. You want to see, especially when you're talking community-led projects or community-centric projects, you want to see those founders and you want to see the team members actively engaging in and participating with the community at large. And it's like, I guess like one of the things I'll also take from that is I had a discussion with Wob.eth, Wob being the founder of the Sappy Seals. And the crux of the conversation was like, okay, look, where does value derive from with NFT projects? Does it derive from the founding team? Does it derive from the core team, or does it derive from the community? And I think it has 2 points. I think when projects start and when projects are looking for that takeoff, the founding team needs to be pushing. The founding team, the core team needs to be the one that's holding the fort down. And that's where you see people like teams like the Sappy Seals, let's say, or Zen Academy is probably a perfect example. Zen Academy led by Zeneca is one of the biggest names in the space. He's pushing forward for Zen Academy. And for a long time, that was the crux. But eventually the hope is, and the aim is, it takes off from that point, and now you have a holdership of with the Seals, probably around 4,000 individuals, right? 4,000 individual wallets. Even if you wanted to be conservative and say like, oh, people are splitting their assets, at least 3,500 individual holders or so, somewhere in that range,
right?
And that's where the value derives from. There's no way that a core team of 5, 10, 15 people can match the output potential of a 3,500 person community holder base. So maximize, like, what a founding team needs to do is set up a structure. You need to see this. You need to see a structure in which the founding team has created a community culture, vibe, and even potentially tools, like with the Sappy Seals meme machine, which is an actual tool, and it's my actually most used utility from any of the NFTs that I own, where you now have literal tools to give your community room to run and an ability to create and post and go forth on their own behalf and build up. So if you wanted me to give you, I guess, a handful of like specific things, you want to, go for it.
No, I think you nailed one of them on the head, which is silence is the enemy. When a project launches, it is the sole responsibility of the founding team to create that momentum. But once it's out there, it's community ethos. And then the last thing you said before you go on to your next was giving the community the tools that they need to post and create more excitement or storybook sizzle. And you were going to say another one. I cut you off.
Not just, I think it's also, so one, let's just say one, founding team needs to take things off. Two, you need to have a clear mission, niche, aim for that community. Three, you want to have community empowerment. Four, when it comes to other things that the founding team should be doing that you should be looking at is like, hey, how well do they understand their holdership and how well do they understand their community? And I'll say this about Azuki, for example. With Azuki being one of my favorite projects, I actually don't even hold any of their assets right now. They did an incredible job of recognizing exactly what their holdership is and wants. Now, notably, their holdership has a lot of like Asia-based whale holdership at the top end, and that's why they released their golden skateboards. They wanted some way of rewarding their top end holders, their whales, in a way that wasn't dilutive to the rest of the collection, and in a way that made those whales feel special and happy. And that was the golden skateboards. And that's one of many things. They've also shown a innate understanding of how to time their announcements, how to push for community engagement in certain ways. And now they're hiring people from their community, like Wale, I think, Wale.swoosh and Elena.eth, which is just, it shows that they have innate understanding of their holdership. And that would be number 4, I guess, innate understanding of their holdership. And fifth metric, man,
It's
fifth
okay.
metric is just like, huh?
4 is great. I mean, I don't want, see, you've already provided such value that when I go back and I listen to that, I'm like, okay, the silence one, that is probably one of my top metrics. When you're not saying anything, I'm concerned. It's like breakdown of communication in any relationship. We're going to come back to you in a second, but MetaMatt, we do have a special guest. Tony, if you can cue up that screen share, a quick pop-in guest to talk a little bit about his community. I'm going to let MetaMatt take this one away.
Yeah, this is a great guest. His name is Noah. He is from the Alien Friends community, Alien Friends holder. He is actually the creator behind the board game Frenemies in Space. We're going to be having him pop up in a little bit. There he is. How's it going, Noah? But yeah, we're going to be talking to Noah about
great.
Awesome game. And this is honestly, I just love the way that you use the IP rights in this. So first of all, I just want to quickly go over what is Frenemies in Space.
Yeah. So Frenemies in Space is a tabletop game, completely original content. It's all based on the Alien Friends collection, which happens to be really my favorite NFT community. I wanted to make a real life experience. I feel like with the metaverse sort of growing in its reach and so much of Web3 being anchored to the digital world, one of the gaps that I saw is in-person experiences that are meaningful, that build relationship and community. And what better way to do that, to foster that, than to have a game that's like lighthearted but competitive and gives everyone a chance to kind of like gather around a common theme that they care about.
No, and I love that what you're saying about because this is like in real life. There's the Dookie Dash. There's all these video games. Everyone's talking about Web3 and video games, and I think that is going to be a big factor in the future of Web3. However, board games, that's like the old school, like you say, get around a table, and it is really in real life community building. Like that's how you really get to know people. I think is when you're actually like in person with them, which is why I love when I'm able to be in the studio with Craig because we can really just bounce some ideas off of each other. I love meeting people who can speak about the space in real life. When it comes to IPs, how did you decide to use the Alien Friends IP, and how did that go about? Was it like a whole process? You decided a whole bunch of papers, or was it just as simple as like just throwing it onto onto a picture onto the board game?
Yeah, no, I'm in probably 20 to 30 different NFT collections, and one of the things that has sort of gripped me as an entrepreneur is the idea that I could use IP for something. And so in the last 2 years that I've been into NFTs, I've thought about 100 different things that I could potentially use my IP on. And around probably September, October, the thought struck me that there's kind of a gap. There's not a lot of people doing games. And when I thought about creating a game, I thought about Alien Friends having the right right mix of this sort of whimsical, cartoony feel, but also the like sci-fi. You can kind of get a little nerdy with it, but not too nerdy. And I just thought it's a great collection. The price point is very attainable for anyone to own an NFT, although you don't have to own an Alien Friends NFT to enjoy the game or use it or buy it or whatever. It's not token gated by any means. But I thought, it's a great community and the kind of community that would love a game. And my goal would be to get members in the community to start playing with people who are not in the community. And that's sort of expanding the exposure of a collection that's really relatable. Like if you try to do that with Mutant Apes right now, and the entry point is like a 5-figure expense, you lose people. But if you're talking about $100 or $3 to get in, then it's a little bit easier to evangelize. So.
No, I agree 100%. That's actually why I personally got an Alien Friends NFT, because they are is a much smaller price level as far as the entry point goes in order to use the IP. And I think it's just so cool. Like you said, other people can be playing the board game who have the Alien Friends NFT, and they can just be having their friends, from who don't know anything about Web3 come in. They're playing this game like, oh, what is all this stuff? What does it mean? Like, you bring your phone, you show them. I think that's a great way to onboard. Personally, have you actually experienced that firsthand? Have you done any big events with the board games, or gone to NFT event like NFT? And I know NFT NYC LA are both coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Have you
so it's still early on.
It?
Yeah, we did a local Alien Friends meetup in Nashville where I live. Cool. And we had a group of 6 people that came, and we all played the game. They loved it, had a lot of fun. I'm still in the test play phase. So I'm shipping end of Q2, early Q3 to people who pre-order now. But the actual game dynamics are in that test play beta phase. And so I've successfully pulled in both Alien Friend holders and non-Alien Friend holders. I've had men play it, women play it. I've just kind of wanted to make sure that the product lands in a way that sticks with people who are not just degens like me.
No, and by the way, I would say we really appreciate this, and I'm so glad that you popped in today. Stay in here, continue to connect and build with the community. I think it's really exciting when you see what I call sub-communities within a community. So here you are developing, using, and utilizing the full abilities of your IP within consent of the founders, and being able to build your brand, your business, and capitalize. And when we hear success stories like that, we know that we're growing further. Now, I do want to come back to today's special guest, Eddie. I got to say, I love this following sentence. Man, I'm just dropping stuff all over the place. The 3-3 Club is an exclusive community of 3-3 crypto enthusiasts.
333. 333.
Yep, that's right. The 333 Club of crypto is an enthusiast, builders, creators, and innovators within the Zen Academy. Thank you, Renee. And to me, when I look at your open scene, now mind you, there's a whole bunch of different metric charts, but very quickly, we see that it did a decent amount of ETH and traded volume. There's 206 owners based on open scene. You'll correct whatever's wrong in here, with a floor price of 5.5 ETH. And you've got 98% unique owners. Now, obviously, this is a pass to get into a community, so I expect that the unique ownership would be much higher. But I love the fact that of those people, those couple hundred people, that's a powerful number, because exponentially that represents the top tier of the whole Zen ecosystem. Tell me a little bit about that community and what goes on specifically in the 333 Club.
Sure. And I'll just specifically on tokenomics, you're probably looking at the new pass. So basically, in terms of what we did, it started out with these 2 letters. There was the Zen Academy letter, and then you had the 333 letter, and you had these 2 main letters. They're both ERC 1155s, which basically means that they're stacking NFTs in a way, if you could consider it like that. And we wanted to convert them to ERC 721s, as well as lead into the Zen chests and our whole next phase of Zen Academy. So to be specific, that what you're looking at, those purple cards, are the new NFT, but they come from previously burned letters. So anything that is not burned, it is not part of that collection. So there is actually a whole separate collection with a much longer history for the 333 Club. And I think the unique ownership of the 333 Club passes are hovering somewhere around 95%, something like that, which is, to be expected, in part because it was a fairly expensive mint, but also maintains a fairly expensive secondary volume right now. It was application based, so that's like kind of why it's fairly unique holdership, which is good, right? Because you want as many uniquely engaged and quality individuals in said 333 club. Now, as for what we do in there, most of it is just high level conversations where we just it's more of like a high, what we'll call like a high signal to noise ratio in there, so that you can just go there and have conversations there, rather than hoping to reach out into an audience of thousands of people and be like, hey, does anyone potentially know anything on this? And you hear back crickets. It's more so you go to the 333 club and you're vastly more likely to get a reasonable and potentially like high quality and direct response out of it. It's also a much better way of getting in contact with people like Zeneca, which Zeneca being one of the, I guess you would say, like greats of the space, one of the bigger names, one of the more respected names. So that's basically one of the most effective ways of getting closer contact with him and the greater Zen Academy team, such as myself, Emily V, Mushroom, Momo, like some pretty great team members to get closer access to. And then also, I'll say this: we are actively working on a process in which we're aiming to have conversations on a separate platform, I believe, in Peak, where we can actually token gate and bring on some of the other leaders in the space, so that we'll be able to provide things like more direct one-to-one conversations and question and answer sessions with some of the bigger names. Like I'm name dropping here. We don't have any direct conversations with them right now. But like, for example, a Luca Netz, let's say, of the Pudgy Penguins, the founder of the Pudgy Penguins, or Wob.eth, or a Frank D. Gods, have them come in through the InPeak platform, and we'll have conversations with them there. So that's stuff that we're working on in the background. And basically anything that we can do to make it such that it's a high-end community feel, where you get in a very high quality conversations between one member to another. And essentially, if you have any question about the Web3 space, especially from like a more high level background and experience,
right,
that's where you go.
Well, and again, your platform is formidable. I mean, I look at the DGen network. We've had NFT Bark on. We've had on Josh and Joe O'Rourke, which is Bunchu.eth, who's heading with Forum 3 to head up Starbucks into Web3 with their loyalty rewards program. It's really cool to watch all of these amazing platforms. Nifty Gateway, we had on Easy Eats Bodega. So I get to watch some of these really successful platforms engage audience and bring in more people. And it's kind of, I've always to say, it's like the big corporations. For me, my podcast is a standalone in that regard. But I love what you had to say about the intimacy of the 3-3 club, the 333 club. Wow, I did leave that 3 out of there. I apologize. It's not 33. Maybe that's going to be my club, the 33 club.
Hey, make it happen.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I like what we're doing here. We've got a building platform, and I enjoy it. And I also get to have conversations with people across multiple platforms like you guys. I mean, how lucky are we, me and Meta Matt? And Meta, I'm gonna head it over to you for a second. Any thoughts on what he had to say about the engagement? Whether it's behind channels on Discord, bringing in big people, or even on obviously big time Twitter Spaces, the amount of people that you have in there. Because we'll talk a little bit about how you navigate a room. Any thoughts from your end, Meta Matt?
Yeah, I mean, because of big people, I mean, I know that big people really, it alters depending on people's perspective. Some people really care about, I know that you were talking, Eddie, earlier, like way earlier, about, someone who has 300K followers versus 3,000 followers. I personally, I know some people like to build followings. I personally like to build communities and people who are going to show up every day, no matter who you have on, no matter what you're doing. Which is why I see that's actually exactly what you're doing. Whenever I've been checking out your spaces in preparation for this podcast, I see a lot of the same core members. They're watching you, which is like really important. So just a quick follow-up question, I guess, on that is, how did you personally build that core following? Because I know there's a lot of people out there who want to do Twitter Spaces, and they kind of rely on their guests to bring the following for them. And that's great, but at the same time, you can only do so much with that. How did you personally build your community as a Spaces host as well?
So a lot of it comes down to a bunch of things. I mean, one, of course, every social media growth hacker will always tell you the same thing: consistency. That's one thing. So we run these things every single Sunday that we can. Every now and then I might be out and about, you know, like I think this Sunday is potentially going to be a tough one, but I'm definitely going to try because I'm going to be in Los Angeles for NFT LA. So here and there, you know, it can be tough, but we do everything that we can to keep it really consistent. So of course, that's number one. Number two, though, is more so just like it comes down to the conversations that you hold as a host. There's different kinds of ways that you can point a Twitter space. Obviously, you have like the Alexander, like Shill and Villains, for example, of the world, where that's more of a entertainment focused space and potentially like tough questions, although some of those questions are definitely pointed. But like learning from him and learning from how to make a space entertaining, that's one. But then you also have people like the Leaps of the world. Now, Leap does a great job of bringing together some really high-end names and really high-end talent within the greater Web3 space. So I can look to how he hosts his space and what are some of the things that he does in terms of even just like naming the space. And how does that attract people and facilitate conversation? Then you look at people like Thread Guy and what kind of energy he brings. You look at people like Deez and how he focuses on artists and some of the more professionals. You just look through a bunch of the different top names, and you kind of, at least for me, I've been picking and choosing like the things that I like and things that how I want to shape my platform. And then it's just when I host my spaces, first off, it's making sure that you, of course, give respect to the other speakers because people have things to say and want an opportunity to say them. And as long as they're willing to say so respectfully, feel free to voice your opinion on my stage. But also it's important. Like one thing that I've recognized that I think a lot of spaces hosts don't do. And I will be making at some point a spaces thread on like my do's and don'ts of Twitter spaces. One thing I've noticed that a lot of spaces hosts don't do, and I think it's very critically important, is let the speakers speak. So what I mean by that is a lot of spaces hosts take it as an opportunity to kind of stand on their own soapbox, especially because when you're a host, the kind of way that most rooms go is a lot of the speakers on stage will just stop talking if a host begins talking and will like put up their hands or put themselves back because they're giving the respect to the host. But a lot of hosts will take advantage of that respect and kind of just go on and on and on and on and on for really no real reason. Or especially like they might not even be the expert on a given topic. They might have the expert in the room, but be speaking more than the expert in said room. Yeah. So my thing, I guess the way that I've like my favorite thing to do with spaces, and perhaps it's something that people like, and one of the reasons why they come to the shows is whenever I have speakers on stage, as if they have any form of reasonable opinion, they're go. Like they get to go. And especially I love when one speaker and another speaker or two speakers have the opportunity to banter back and forth with each other. I don't want to necessarily hop into the conversation and break things up unneeded. Like I'm a host, but that doesn't mean I have to be talking every minute. There's been times where I've spent, I think like there was at least one time or two times where I've spent 30 to 45 minutes silent as the speakers went back and forth with each other because they were carrying themselves fine. And that's the kind of conversations people want to hear. And that's the kind of platform that people are like, I respect this guy's space. I want to come there because I know I'm going to get to have a good conversation with someone else and not have to worry about, Eddie coming in and just cutting me off every single time that I'm getting into my groove of things. So that's what I try to go for.
Yeah. And I think that's like the biggest difference between like shows or, even podcasts like this and like a space is what I look at spaces, especially as a host. I look at it as I'm going to a bar, let's just say, or a restaurant, whatever. And I'm inviting a bunch of my friends in and they're all coming together. They don't really know each other, but I know all of them. So it's my job to make sure that they're all at the very least getting along or, at the very least, we have conversation to go. But if they want to talk to each other and they're having a great time, by all means.
And by the way, that's why we keep our Twitter spaces open for 15 minutes after. And my responsibility, Eddie, is now we're diving in. I've got the shovel out. We're going to dive in. What I want to do is we're going to pick up our pace just a little bit because you brought so much valuable information, by the way. And I agree with you. Never soapbox, but always make sure that I'm extrapolating as much as I possibly can. I heard you talking about the royalties as a revenue stream in the space. And you said it cannot be predicted as part of the financial incentive for founders of a community or project. Can you unpack that for me?
Sure. I just think that as for royalties as they stand now are so unpredictable. And so like the tech for it is not established. The companies that are facilitating a lot of the trades, namely Blur, OpenSea, and a few of the other main marketplaces, do not have an established precedent on that yet, and are basically viable to change at any minute. And I think that's fair because that's fair market competition. And also, frankly, royalties as they are currently set up in the NFT space are not my favorite. I'm not a fan of how they're structured, namely because when they were created, the idea is, okay, if an artist sells their piece for $1,000 and then it sells again for $10,000 2 months later, they probably want a piece of that royalty. And that's honestly a sensible request. What isn't a sensible request is if I buy that piece for $1,000 and I sell it 1 minute later for $999, they shouldn't, like, no one ever asked for 10% of that entire sale either. It's not 10% of the delta between one point to another. It's 10% of the whole thing. So the entire structure, in my opinion, of royalties as it stands thus far, kind of broken. And that's why you see a lot of pushback from the market. And as a result, the market is responding by either shutting it off or moving around with it. So I'll just say for royalties, I think that we haven't hit what we're looking for with royalties just yet. I think eventually the tech can get there, and the tech will probably get there. And until we have established precedents from both marketplaces, platforms, and even just the general culture of the Web3 space, royalties cannot be the main driver of revenue, or at least anticipated to be the main driver of revenue for an NFT company as it stands.
Right. I think it's incredibly important to have royalties in. You said 10% of an overall versus 10% from one delta to the other, from one sale to the next. Yeah, I don't know where I stand on that. I haven't really gone deep into that thought, but I do know that royalties are incredibly important. And I know that you make some really good points on that. What I do want to do, Tony, is a quick screen share, because I do want to talk about a 29-part thread that you did. All right, right here. I just want to show it on the screen real quick, and then you can come out. Tony, you can come out now. All right, perfect. I want to bring it back to me. So let's unpack this tweet. What about the Dogepound NFT caught your attention? One, and then two, what were the marks for this community project that said you needed in? And let's talk about the 2 months of research around this.
Sure. So I started looking to NFTs. I want to say late 2020. That was about when the punk sales started to come through as bigger names, and I started to look around. I actually, for the longest time, was very interested in F1 Delta Time. Didn't end up buying in, but that was one of the projects that I looked at the time. And then you saw the Beeple sale for 69 million or so, and it was like, okay, there's something here. I need to be paying really, really close attention. I initially was a fan of a guy named Alex Becker. It's like at ZSS Becker. A lot of people were brought in with him, and he had, like, I used him as kind of someone that was, educating me as I came into the space. And I looked at projects and I was like, okay, art is one thing, but it needs to be kind of either memeable or something that people can attach to. That's one thing. Another side of things was, especially at the time, I was very interested in the concept of utility and like what utilities could be provided through an NFT. And as it stood at the time when Dogepound was launching, I was like, okay, this seems memeable. It has someone like Alex Becker, who's a reasonable name in the space, talking about it. So it has like some level of social traction. It looks fun. And in terms of community, there seems to be like a quickly establishing community for this thing. So, and especially on utility, I was like, all right, utility, they have a couple marks of utility that they have planned for presenting and whatnot. And I was like, okay, this hits basically all the marks of what I've been studying in NFTs for the past 6 months. And that was July of 2021. So I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to take a swing, it might as well be here. And I took a pretty big swing at the time. Thankfully, I was right. It worked out pretty dang well. And if it didn't, I don't know if I would actually still be here today. I say that often, but I was right. It went up, and that kind of jump-started my future forward. Went to Neo Tokyo afterwards. That really jump-started things. And then through 333 Club, and the rest is history.
And you and I offline talked about how Alex Becker and Elio Trades had such an impact on me starting the podcast last year. And when I started, I didn't really think much about Twitter. And interesting enough, that's where you build.
Right.
How did your conversation last part? And then I do want to get into a personal topic, because as we've been talking about diversifying more in the podcast, I want to share some personal content related to health and well-being and maybe some general Web 2 related topics. But how did your conversation with Satoshi's mom affect your forward momentum in the Web3 space? Because
That's so funny.
That thread, such a pivotal conversation.
That I forget what the context of that conversation was. Honestly, I could probably pull it up, but that conversation was more so of that was me not knowing what I was doing in NFTs. Like that was literally the very first time that I'd ever had any experience with NFTs. And yeah, I've just found it. It's July 17th, 2021. So he said things like, congrats, solid decision. This project hits all the marks for me. So that kind of helped me out and made me feel a little bit more confident at the time. There's like, let's see. There's a lot of things that he was talking about here that kind of made me feel like, okay, he gave me tips on what to do with my NFTs, like in terms of how I should consider listing them, how I should consider interacting with them, how I should consider and getting involved in the community, what I should be looking at with traits, and a lot more of like the specifics of NFTs that I had. Like it's one thing to study NFTs from afar, and it's another thing entirely to have a brand new set of NFTs that you just put a pretty decent investment into that you have really never interacted with OpenSea before. You've never interacted with any of these like actual how you actually use your NFTs. And this first conversation with Satoshi's mom on July 17th, 2021 at 6:18 p.m. Eastern was one of those things where I was like, okay, there are resources in this space. There are people that I can talk to and ask questions. And also there are ways to get these problems that I'm having solved in a way that's reasonable, fairly easy to do and straightforward. And these are the people, like that was my first ever community experience. And the guy Satoshi's mom is still pretty active in the space. I still talk with him every now and then. The guy's a real dude. And I just, that was for me, like you said, it was pivotal because it was the first time that anyone had had any kind of community interaction with me. And it was one of the first major steps that kind of pushed me towards the past 2 years, basically.
And kismet, it's meant to be. And I think that's a really important thing, is that some of these conversations and sometimes the boxes that are checked are the ones that might not make any sense. It's that gut feeling, and you listen to your gut, you build community, you build trust. You and I are big networkers. You're more a bit of an introvert than I am. We're both of only children family, so we don't have any siblings, but yet I have 2 kids of my own. It's kind of interesting how everything kind of turns out, and how that journey of other people in our lives helping to guide us, especially in a space where a lot of the communities, the digital asset communities, are not going to be around long term. Not all of them. There's going to be a few that survive, and those few that survive, there are sometimes the intangibles that you can't put your hands on. And you've given us a lot of really great alpha insight from your end, because you're in spaces literally every day of the week, and you're in spaces where you've got thousands of people that are coming in to listen to what you, Zen Academy, the 333 Club, have to say. And I think that's incredibly important. Tony, in a second, we're going to go to a screen share, but I want to kind of share a little bit, or open up a little bit to our community, because I think it's important. Pennybois is a very big part of CraigO's Crypto Corner, because we have Matt. Matt. Do you like that, Matt? And the story of recoveries are very powerful, and the never alone recovery is something that Pennybois gets behind. And I think when we had our conversation last week with Austin, who's the founder of Pennybois. He is an addict, but he was able to realign his addiction to success and impacting others. And as he had said before, his teacher he said, you can either lead people to salvation, or you can lead them off a cliff. And Austin has that powerful ability to do either or. And he's choose to use his addiction and his powers for good, building up the Pennybois community, which we will in a second hear from what Matt has to say about this week's update in Pennybois. But I want to just share a quick personal story about recovery and what I think it means in that journey. So I had shared a few weeks ago that I had dealt with anxiety and depression. What people don't know about me is that my mother had passed away of neuropathy in 2015 because she battled for years with alcoholism. And I watched how she went through the recovery process, or being in Alcoholics Anonymous, and then me going to Al-Anon. And I've watched how it can tear families apart. I've also watched how it can take away your your energy to want to continue in this world. And what I think is really important about Never Alone Recovery, and Tony, if you can do the quick screen share and put up the number so that people can see that, actually you can just put it across the screen. Never Alone Recovery, I'd highly recommend that you check them out. They are addicts who have been in recovery, who are looking to help people, whether it's their insurance plan, whether it's matching them with, I believe there's 15,000 recovery places throughout the United States where you can go and you can seek treatment and help. It's really important because whether you're in Web3 or Web2, a healthy lifestyle can lead you towards success. No matter how good you are, no matter how much money you have, if you have addiction and you have, whether it's drug or alcohol or depression or anxiety, and you haven't figured out and haven't had the help, you're in trouble. Get that help, because all of the material goods, possessions, money does not matter if you're not healthy. All right, Matt, I want to bring it to you for a second with a quick Pennybois update. Tell us what's going on, my friend.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, with everyone's talking about, oh, this is the end of the crypto bear market. Bitcoin hit 25K. We're all bullish, and then some people are talking about being bearish, and everyone's trying to call whether or not we're going up or down from here. We personally don't really care at Pennybois. We're going to trade either way. We know we're not looking to be prophets and say whether it's going to be going up or be going down. We just want to have the tools necessary to trade, whether it be options, day trading, swings, whatever it may be. We want to be able to trade the ups and the downs successfully. So, right now we are doing a big emphasis on education. We have a bunch of live streams coming up this week. You can check out the schedule in our Discord. Speaking of Austin, he'll be going live Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Last Sunday, he called out some SPY options and some day trade or some possible swing trades going into Monday. And they were the levels he called out for SPY was spot on. So be sure to check that out. That's going to be Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's every Sunday. And that'll be with Austin, who you were just talking about, Craig. And yeah, Never Alone Recovery, huge fan of that. Austin's also the founder of, like we just said, Pennybois and Never Alone. They're here to help you, not just during the process of recovery, but also after. There's a lot of programs out there that just want to get you into recovery, get that money from, whatever it may be, whether it's a referral, whatever it may be. They just want to get you in. They don't care about what happens afterwards. Never Alone really does care about what happens afterwards. And that's really important, which is why, this is why we kind of bring that mentality into Pennybois. We care about our traders. We care about our members, about our students. We want them to not just know about the RSI, but also understand it and feel like they can really, take these skills and put it into the market. But then also, we can also be there for them when something bad does happen, because there are going to be a lot of losses in trading. That's why community is so important.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Pennybois gets around that psychology and talks about it, because listen, if you're broke, depression, going to have a drink or a drug is very easy, because you want to numb that reality or that pain, and it's completely understandable.
Well, there's addiction in trade. There's FOMO. There's a lot of people who just want that next win, just like with gambling. There's a lot of gamblers in the stock market and the crypto market, and especially the NFT market.
And by the way, what I would like Eddie to know, like when he comes away from this podcast today and our conversation and in the build of our relationship, because I would love this to build from forward, is two things. I'm not here for the light. I'm not here for the shine. All right. So maybe that's one. The second is I'm most excited by traditional products and services coming into Web3 and integrating with mature communities like yours, like the DGen Network, what Forum 3 is doing to bring Starbucks into Web3 with their loyalty rewards program for Odyssey. That really excites me. So we're going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, and then we're going to head into Twitter Spaces for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, because I do want to keep everything online. And I think we had some great conversation. You brought some really great content in. But Eddie, I'm going to let you pick this one. There are two trending topics because we covered the other two. One is Blur's wash trading, right? And how they're growing very fast in that regard. And I stick to OpenSea, right? So that's one, you could talk about that. Or Meta. No more back to Facebook and Instagram, right? So when I say Meta, that's going to probably change back to Facebook. Instagram, it shook the ground for a lot of Web3 companies saying, well, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're changing the narrative. Now you're working in silence. Like I said, they cut a lot of jobs. So are we going to pick Blur wash trading as our final thing, or are we going to pick no more Meta? What are your thoughts?
There's an excellent meme from this one girl that really likes tacos. And she said, why not both when asked hard or soft shelled? So I'm going to keep this quick and I'll answer you on both sides. For Meta and Facebook, I'll say this. I think it was just a really poor understanding of product market fit. I don't think that they really understood that community was the main thing, less so than the side of just displaying those assets. So I don't think they really understood that. I think eventually they'll come to understand that. And they do have the base level tech stack. They didn't just delete it. Most good companies won't just delete their tech stack. They're just reallocating focus right now. And I think come a reasonable time, and whether that's bull market or whatever, it'll be back. Now, to switch over to Blur and Blur wash trading, I have been a part. So like, I actually feel like wash trading is not the correct term. Everyone calls it wash trading. I don't think that that's right. What I would probably call it is rapid trading is what I would say, something of that end. Because when you think of wash trading, people are trying to wash funds normally illicitly. That's not really what's going on here. It's more so people are trying to rapidly trade in and out of collections because you were rewarded from being either on the sideline with your bid in or actively listing, trying to get out as quickly as possible. That's what you're rewarded for on Blur. Now, I do think that a couple things on that. One, I've been participating in it for a while, and a lot of people think like, oh, all this rapid trading or wash trading has been the downfall of a lot of projects. And the reality is this has been going on to one extent or another since, I want to say, November. And all this trading and this serious volume that went through all these projects actually laid the foundation for the pump of sorts, the micro bull that we saw in January and February. So to say that it is just actively tearing down the market just doesn't. It's an opinion that's formed from a lot of people that only really took notice of Blur after the airdrop, and after the airdrop, the market started to come down. Yeah. Everything leading up to that was pushed up by Blur and the same mechanisms, but people just don't really recognize that because they haven't been following it. So that's one. And now I will say one of my biggest problems though right now with Blur is if you look at like a traditional bid ask spread. So you have like on, let's see, if you have here coming that's your buy, right? Like the bid walls. And then here going up like that's your sell wall, right? And that's like what a healthy buy sell wall looks like, something like that, right? Where you have the two slopes somewhere along that line. Now with Blur, because of their incentivizations, that slope is really stilted. So here you have your buys, and it's, instead of being like this, it is like this, where it's nothing for a while, and then right at the bid, like right at the top level bids, it spikes like crazy. And then on the sell side, you have a normal sell side where it's like this. Sorry for all the weird the hot like tutting I'm doing. But like what it leads to is a misshapen market where the bids are all stacked up at the very, very front, whereas the sells are all still looking kind of healthy. It's that, to me, is my only kind of problem with the incentivization style, though I will note this, and this might be alpha, I don't really know, maybe, but they are currently rewarding both bids and sells, actually. And they note that they reward bids, and they show you the points that you're getting rewarded with bids, but they also note that they reward listings, but they don't show you the points that you're getting with listings. And if you look at those bid buy sell walls where the bids right over here, the green, are like stilted in a weird stilt, right? That implies that the distribution of points on the bidding side might be a little lopsided or weird, whereas on the sell side, it's normal and healthy. And at the very, very most at risk of selling, there's almost no one there. So I get the feeling that they're hiding how much they're rewarding people. In part, they're hiding how much people they're rewarding listers, because one, they don't want everyone to floor all their NFTs and create a lopsided listing where everything is at the floor and everyone's rushing to the bottom. And they also will probably be heavily rewarding listers at the who are listing in aggressive listing positions. At least that's my opinion, and that's from, I've been watching it pretty closely, so that's my thought on that. I think ultimately, if I had to like have a closing point on it, I think ultimately Blur is making the market more efficient. It might have added some inefficiencies, like I said, with the stilted bid wall, but ultimately I do think it's a more efficient market as a result of Blur, and I think come a few more months and years, we'll be happy for the marketplace competition that we're seeing between Blur, Gem, which is OpenSea's competitor to Blur, and all the other markets like Magically and whatnot that are coming into the space.
Before we head into the rapid fire questions to close up, our YouTube and our Facebook live streams and our podcast, and we'll stay open on Twitter Spaces. I want to say a couple things. Meta, no more. Facebook, I think you and I both agree. They're just building in silence. They're cutting the fat of employees, meaning they don't need as many employees as they had. They're going to divert that money into other areas, but they're not closing shop by any means. No question about that. So I believe you and I are on the same page. I don't disagree with you on Blur. I think the nuances of what you're speaking about is playing day trader, whereas my focus is help me to simply understand this, right? Because part of our podcast, part of building our platform is attracting people into who are Web 2, who are just thinking about it. And I don't want them to feel intimidated. And if I'm sitting here going, I get it, and I'm like, whoa, but you're right. You make a lot of good points. And why are they not showing their cards? And at the end of the day, this was a brilliant move on Blur's part, because once everybody's been rewarded, they will have maybe put the crown mantle of being king versus OpenSea. But I also believe we're creatures of habits. And for that, I'm a fan of OpenSea. I'm going to stick to that. But I also don't like connecting to other platforms. I'm very cautious. I'm very protective of the little that I have. And I want to make sure I just completed my full set of on-chain monkeys. Big shout out to my on-chain monkey family. Big shout out to ENS community. Big shout out to Stone ETH right there. Wait, there. Oh, the other side. For the Stone book, which is a shield folio to safely protect those seed phrases. As we know, the ERC 2040, the ERC 4337, which is going to be, which is going to deploy directly on smart contracts, which is going to forego and also help people to protect if they lose their private key or their seed phrases. They're going to be able to possibly have access. That's a whole other technical thing. I won't do it here, but I do want to say to you, Dancing Eddie, this is a great conversation. You are an educator first, so I did as best as I could to listen. And also part about, I think, us being good podcasters or hosts is us repeating back, so as the teacher, that we were listening. Now, Meta Matt, can you please take it away with the rapid fire questions? And before you do, Eddie, these are rapid fire questions. Quick. I love you, my friend.
All right. So the first one, I'm looking at a tweet here. It's actually 2 tweets from you, Eddie. The first tweet is from, I believe, March 3rd. And this one, you're saying, not going to lie, this world building is impressive. And you're talking about a kid called Beast who said, well, I stand by what I said. I've seen improvement from Ratsby. I believe he's probably the owner of A Kid Called Beast. And the team in the beginning to change my tune. The first original tweet, you were talking about how you're bears on A Kid Called Beast and how they simply have no emotional ability to handle criticism or adversity, and instead now has a long history blaming others. I'm curious, are you bearish or bullish on A Kid Called Beast now? Because I know this is a couple months later, and everyone's kind of talking about it still.
I think long term they've formed a cultish community of sorts. The team seems to be learning, and if I had to pick one side or the other, I would lean slightly bullish.
So no, I know that there's a lot of hype behind it, and that's why I personally I'm also bullish, because hype falls as soon as like 1 or 2 or 3 people sell and create those big walls. Next question is one I ask everyone: Alien Friends or V Friends Volume 2 in 2 years, which one will have the higher floor price?
That's tough. I would probably have to lean. As much as I love the Alien Friends and all the things that they're doing, I can't fade Gary that hard. I really can't. So I would, if I had to pick one or the other, it would be V Friends.
That's what everyone has said so far, and I also love Alien Friends, but I also agree that I
think both can succeed. By the way, both can succeid, and one might even outperform the other. But if you're asking strictly on which one's having a higher floor price, I think it's going to be the V Friends.
I saw you had a Moonbirds hat on Twitter. What is that? I'm assuming you have more merch than just that. So what is your favorite NFT merch that you own, and which one would you want to own in the future that you don't currently have?
So I actually only have the 333 Club hoodie, which is super soft and really nice, and the Moonbirds hat. But that's it. That's all I have. But I will say I'm getting ready to do a sweep of sorts, sweep the floor on Sappy Seals merch. It's just my favorite community, and their merch is top tier and very comfy. So Sappy Seals.
I love that. I know that Craig, you have that on-chain monkeys. I believe people can buy that with tokens or bananas or something like that,
They
which is
can.
really cool.
By the way, just a shameless before you finish up the rapid
Yeah,
fire,
last one.
go for it, my friend.
No, go for the shameless plug. I love shameless
plug.
plugs.
I think I would love like a Zen Academy hat or mug or shirt in the background. I mean, listen, we're building out.
We'll work on it. I'll ask Emily. I will say we are running low on supplies, but I will ask Emily for you.
Hey, listen, it's more free advertising for a great conversation in a community that I respect here on the podcast. All right, go for it, Meta.
All right, so one word answer. So let's just say you have 500K in your account, or just 500K in general. Now, after all this, all this FTX, all the Silicon Valley Bank, what would you think is the safest place to store that money? Banks, art, crypto, AI, stocks, bonds, real estate. I know I asked a PB Alerts analyst. He said he has a lot of in his Vanguard getting that 4%, not even having to trade or put risk on it. What do you think is the one word answer? The safest place under your couch could work too. It could be a phrase.
The explicit safest place, one word answer, still a solid bank.
I agree.
A solid bank is especially one that's FDIC insured.
Yes.
If you're still then betting on the U.S. standing long term to some extent, and I would probably, if I had to place my bets on the thing that's most likely to stand for the long term, at least for the next 5, 10, 15 years, probably the United States more so than say USDC, and that's coming from someone that holds a lot of USDC right now.
And that's why I want to ask you, because I know there's a lot of people who hold a lot of USDC who are trying to maybe pump whatever they have or whatever it may be, and saying like, oh, banks are going to zero, it's all going to crumble. Put all your money into Bitcoin. But like, hey, if America crumbles and banks go to zero, I'm pretty sure crypto's not going to look so good either. It won't. Really quickly, just while we finish up, what is the dancing Eddie? I saw a picture of you. Are you like a professional dancer at one point? Like, are you? What's the dancing part of the dancing Eddie?
Sir Hamilton,
dude. If I wanted to, there was certainly a time where I could have pushed towards becoming a professional dancer. I do just recognize that it's not exactly the most rewarding, profitable career path. So I've actually made more money flipping NFTs than some of my friends who have pursued like using my dancing to get whitelisted for NFTs has been more profitable than some of my friends who just dance. So I'll say that, and like I will say I'm pretty good. I've been doing it for a long time, and I've competed on some pretty high levels. So with some people are like, oh, you're capping, you're lying, you can't dance. You're like, well. Yeah, let's have a battle and we'll see how things roll.
I love that. That's the alpha for those dancers out there. So use your dance moves.
Seriously, I'm actually going to go to some of my friends who are dancers and be like, hey, just so you know, you could be making money by just posting yourself on Twitter to these projects. Like it will make them more money than some of their dancing careers have so far, which is sad, but also alpha.
That's the arts, as we know. Podcast hosting isn't and Twitter Spaces. It's hard to get those sponsorships and to make it in the media world.
Right.
Especially with the amount of competition out there. But no, I love it. Craig, back to you.
Thank you. I love all that we talked about. We covered a lot of ground on how you guys are thinking. I would say on the last part, Matt, I think right now in this market, we had to start thinking outside the box, going live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter Spaces. We also had to think about how are we diving in on our questions, so it's not just like 2 people or 3 people or 4 just getting on a mic going, hey dude, ripping the ball, throwing back a beer.
Just a Taco Bell right now in the drive-thru.
People to learn. And I'm just fortunate enough. I got Meta Matt, we got Ralph Quintero. We have high-level conversations. We were talking about what does monetization look like, and I think it's interesting for anybody that's tuning in from a content creation point. And I look at it 4 points from my end. One is keynote speaker. We did that here at the Knowlton, where I was actually a moderator. So moderator, keynote speaker, you channel monetization, which is very little amongst all the social platforms. I mean, you got to have some Mr. Beast numbers if we're to be honest. But again, I'm not a Mr. Beast type of individual. Nothing against him, just not my speed. And then the last one is product or is product endorsement. Is that someone goes, I like what you're doing. I see the vision. Let's grow together. And that's how I see those four. And if you're focused on that at all times, and Matt, before we came on today, we talked about that and how important it is. So we're going to close this out. We're going to stay in Twitter Spaces for about maybe 5 minutes just to close out with just a couple questions, because I know we're running well past the hour, and I appreciate. Big shout out to Downtime TV, Tony, Renee, and Mike. I appreciate you guys and all that you do. Eddie, I'm so grateful that we got to have a conversation and truly connect here in the podcast today.
Seriously, thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to your guys' community. I appreciate the conversation with you guys. You guys came well prepped. This was fun. This was from my experience, I was the hard one to work with here. I was the one that was difficult to reach, not them. The guys here hosting are doing a great job. I was the one who made things difficult. So I really appreciate you guys. This has been fun.
Getting you on, talking, listening to what you have to say. Again, class is in session, and you said it perfectly. When you can listen, not only listen, but let the other person know that they've been heard. I've heard you today, and I also go back and listen, and we create these kind of short threads, and Matt does a lot. Much love and respect to you, my friend. Stick on for a few minutes, and Tony, let's cue us out. Thank you so much for watching CraigO's Crypto Corner, the best in Web3, blockchain, NFT, and cryptocurrency technologies. CraigO signing off.